It started with a feeling, the kind you can't explain, but can't ignore. You know the one. That gnawing sensation in your gut that tells you something's wrong, even when everything on the surface looks perfectly normal. It's the feeling that wakes you up at 3 a.m., heart pounding, mind racing through 1,000 tiny details that suddenly don't add up anymore. His name was Daniel. We'd been together for 3 years. 3 years that felt like a lifetime of memories, inside jokes, shared dreams, and plans for a future I thought was as certain as sunrise. We'd talked about marriage, about kids, about growing old together in that brownstone we always walked past on Sunday mornings, the one with the blue door and the flower boxes that bloomed with tulips every spring. But lately, something had shifted. It was subtle at first. So subtle I convinced myself I was being paranoid, insecure, one of those jealous girlfriends I'd always sworn I'd never become. The changes were small, almost insignificant when isolated. But together they painted a picture I desperately didn't want to see. The late replies started around February. Messages that used to come back in seconds now took hours. "Sorry, babe, busy at work," became his standard excuse, typed with the kind of casual dismissiveness that made my chest tight. His phone, which used to sit carelessly on the coffee table during our movie nights, now stayed glued to his palm, screen down, password suddenly changed from my birthday to something he claimed was more secure. Then came the sudden secrecy, whispered phone calls taken in the bathroom. His laptop screen hastily closed when I walked into the room. New cologne, expensive, musky, nothing like the fresh citrus scent I'd bought him for Christmas, the one he'd claimed to love. He'd come home smelling like someone else's choice, someone else's taste. The nights working late became a pattern I could predict, like clockwork. Every Tuesday and Thursday, like clockwork. Sometimes Saturdays too. His firm was supposedly drowning in a massive case, he said. Corporate litigation that required all hands on deck, he explained, with the kind of conviction that almost made me believe him. Almost. But I'd met his colleagues at the Christmas party. I knew their names, their faces, their stories. And when I casually mentioned the demanding case to his friend Marcus at a mutual friend's birthday dinner, the confused look on Marcus's face told me everything I needed to know. "Big case?" Marcus had laughed, reaching for another beer. "Man, we've been dead quiet since January. Daniel's been leaving early most days, actually." That night, the night of that birthday party, I couldn't eat, couldn't breathe. I sat across from Daniel at the restaurant, watching him laugh and joke with our friends, watching him play the role of devoted boyfriend with Oscar-worthy performance, and I felt like I was drowning in plain sight. Nobody else could see it. The cracks in his smile, the way his eyes never quite met mine anymore, the distance between us, even when we were sitting side by side. I wanted to believe I was wrong. God, how desperately I wanted to be wrong. I wanted to believe that love was enough, that the 3 years we'd built together, the life we'd created, the promises we'd made were enough to withstand whatever storm was brewing. I wanted to believe that the man who'd held me through my father's funeral, who'd surprised me with breakfast in bed just because it was Tuesday, who'd once driven 4 hours in a snowstorm to bring me my favorite soup when I had the flu, I wanted to believe that man wouldn't do this to me. But love doesn't lie. People do. The breaking point came on a Wednesday night in March, one of those crisp, early spring evenings when the air still held winter's bite, but you could smell the promise of warmer days ahead. Daniel had come home around 7, claiming exhaustion, and headed straight for the shower. He'd kissed my forehead absently, barely looking at me, already somewhere else in his mind. His phone sat on the kitchen counter, buzzing with notifications. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. The screen lit up with each buzz, and even from across the room, I could see the name, Emily, followed by preview texts that made my blood run cold. "Miss you already. Can't wait for this weekend. You left your watch at my place again, Lowell." My hands shook as I picked up the phone. I could hear the shower running upstairs, the sound of water hitting tile. Daniel humming something tuneless and carefree. I had maybe 5 minutes, maybe less. I knew his passcode, or at least I knew his old one. My birthday, 0815. I tried it, expecting the phone to reject me, to prove my paranoia wrong. But it opened. He hadn't changed it after all, or maybe he'd changed it and then changed it back. A fragment of guilt making him keep that one connection to me. The messages loaded, and I scrolled through a conversation that shattered 3 years of my life in seconds. Emily. Her name was Emily, and from the looks of it, this had been going on for months. Since December, based on the earliest messages I could find, right around the time he'd given me that beautiful necklace for Christmas, the one with the small diamond pendant I was wearing at that very moment. The one I'd thought meant he was going to propose soon. The messages were detailed, intimate, disgustingly familiar. Inside jokes that should have been ours, pet names that made me nauseous, photos, God, the photos, pictures of them together at restaurants I'd suggested we try, places he'd claimed were too expensive or too far when I'd mentioned them. Selfies in bed. Her hair spread across pillows I recognized from his apartment before we'd moved in together. Screenshots of apartment listings. They were apparently looking at places together, planning a future while I was at home planning ours. One message, dated just 2 days earlier, made my knees buckle. Can't believe we're almost at 6 months. Best decision I ever made was swiping right on you. 6 months, half a year. While I was falling asleep next to him every night, while I was doing his laundry and meal prepping our lunches, and attending his firm's events as his proud girlfriend, he was building an entire separate life with someone else. And from the tone of the messages, from the casual way they discussed their plans and shared their days, I wasn't the other woman in this scenario. I was. I heard the shower shut off upstairs. Quickly, I closed the messages, put the phone back exactly where he'd left it, screen down, and walked to the living room on legs that felt like they might give out. I sat on the couch we'd picked out together at IKEA, the one we'd spent an entire Saturday assembling while drinking wine and laughing at the incomprehensible instructions. I sat there in the dim light of our shared apartment, surrounded by the evidence of our shared life, and felt everything I'd thought was solid ground turn to quicksand beneath me. Daniel came downstairs 15 minutes later, hair still damp, wearing the gray sweatpants I'd bought him for his birthday. He smiled at me, that easy, charming smile that had first made me fall for him at that coffee shop 3 years ago, and asked if I wanted to order Thai food for dinner. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger wearing my boyfriend's face. "We need to talk," I said, quietly. The smile faltered, just for a second, but I saw it. The flash of panic in his eyes quickly masked. "About what?" he asked. Casual, but his hand moved unconsciously to where his phone sat in his pocket. "About Emily." The color drained from his face. For a moment, we just stared at each other across the coffee table that suddenly felt like an ocean between us. I watched him calculate, watched him run through options in his mind, deny, deflect, defend. I could almost see the wheels turning. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. That was almost worse somehow. A denial would have given me something to push back against, something to fight. But he just stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, before finally sinking onto the armchair across from me, not next to me. That distance told me everything. "How long have you known?" he asked quietly, as if that was the relevant question, as if the timeline of my discovery mattered more than the timeline of his betrayal. "Does it matter?" My voice sounded strange to my own ears, flat, detached, like I was listening to someone else speak. "How long has it been going on?" He ran his hands through his damp hair, a gesture I'd always found endearing. Now it just looked like a performance. "Since December," he admitted. It just happened. Things don't just happen, Daniel. I was surprised by how steady I sounded. Inside, I was screaming. Inside, I was shattering into 1,000 pieces. But outside, I was calm, cold even. You made choices. You chose to download a dating app. You chose to message her. You chose to meet her. You chose to sleep with her. You chose to lie to me every single day for 4 months. 3.5, he corrected automatically, then seemed to realize how absurd that was. I mean, 3.5 months, I repeated. That's better? That makes it okay? No, of course not. Sarah, He reached forward, but I pulled back, and he let his hand fall. I don't know what to say. I fucked up. You fucked up? A bitter laugh escaped my throat. You didn't fuck up, Daniel. Fucking up is forgetting an anniversary or burning dinner. You had a whole entire relationship with someone else. You were planning a future with her, looking at apartments together. His eyes widened. You read all of it? Enough. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold, despite the warmth of the apartment. Was any of it real? Us, I mean. The last 3 years. Was any of it actually real? Of course it was real, he said quickly. Too quickly. Sarah, what we have, it's real. This thing with Emily, it's not the same. Then why? The word came out broken, and I hated myself for it. Hated that I was giving him the satisfaction of seeing me hurt. If what we had was so real, why would you throw it away for something that's not the same? He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. You've changed. I felt like he'd slapped me. I've changed? We've changed, he amended, but the damage was done. Over the past year, things between us, they got comfortable, routine. We stopped going out, stopped doing things together. You're always working on your blog or hanging out with your friends, and I felt alone. So you cheated on me because I have hobbies and friends? My voice was rising now, the calm facade cracking. Because we became comfortable after 3 years together? That's what people in long-term relationships do, Daniel. They build a life. They get comfortable. They don't stay in the honeymoon phase forever. I know that, he said defensively. I'm not saying it's your fault. It sounds exactly like you're saying it's my fault. I'm not. He stood up, pacing now. I'm just trying to explain. Emily, she makes me feel the way you used to make me feel. Excited, new, like I'm someone interesting, someone worth being excited about. And I don't? Tears were streaming down my face now, hot and angry. I support your career. I take care of you when you're sick. I plan our vacations and remember your mom's birthday and pick up your favorite coffee on my way home from work. I love you, Daniel. I've loved you with everything I have for 3 years, and that's not enough because it's not new and exciting anymore. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Regret, maybe, or just discomfort at being confronted with the reality of what he'd done. It didn't mean anything, he said finally. Emily, she doesn't mean what you mean to me. Those words, those infuriating, insulting words, echoed through my mind. It didn't mean anything. As if that made it better. As if the fact that he'd risked everything we had for something meaningless was supposed to comfort me. If it didn't mean anything, I said slowly, then you threw away 3 years of us for nothing. You broke my heart for nothing. You lied to me every day for months for nothing. I stood up, wiping my eyes. And somehow that's supposed to make me feel better? Sarah, please, are you in love with her? The question hung in the air between us. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I don't know. Maybe. I think so. But I love you too. You can't love us both, Daniel. Why not? He looked genuinely confused, and that confusion hurt more than anything else. People can love more than one person. It doesn't mean what we have isn't real. I stared at this man I'd thought I knew. This man I'd built my entire adult life around, and realized I was looking at a stranger. He actually believed what he was saying. He actually thought he could have both of us, that he could keep me as his comfortable home base, while exploring something shiny and new with Emily. "Did you tell her about me?" I asked. He hesitated. That hesitation was answer enough. "She doesn't know I exist, does she?" I felt something hard and cold settle in my chest. "What did you tell her? Are you single in her version of your life? Or do you have some convenient excuse?" "It's complicated," he mumbled. "It's really not." I walked to the bedroom, pulled out my suitcase from the closet. My hands were steady now, powered by something beyond anger or hurt, something like clarity. "You lied to both of us. You built a relationship with her on a foundation of lies, just like you've been lying to me for months. What are you doing?" He followed me, panic creeping into his voice. "I'm leaving." I started pulling clothes from drawers, not caring what I grabbed, just needing to get out. "I'm going to stay with Jessica for a while." "Sarah, wait. Can we just talk about this? We can work through this. Couples therapy, whatever you need. I'll end things with Emily right now, I swear. I'll block her number. Just please don't leave." I stopped packing and turned to face him. "You'll end things with her? You mean the relationship you've been hiding from me for 3.5 months? The woman you're making plans with, looking at apartments with, building a future with, while I'm sleeping next to you every night?" I zipped the suitcase. "I'm not competing for your attention, Daniel. I'm not fighting for a spot in your life that I should have been guaranteed the moment we said, 'I love you' 3 years ago. But I do love you." "No, you don't." The words came out quiet but firm. "You love the idea of me. You love having someone to come home to, someone to do your laundry and cook your meals, and make you feel good about yourself. But you don't love me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have been able to do this." "That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed, a harsh sound. "You want to talk about fair? Was it fair to let me believe everything was okay while you were building a secret life? Was it fair to let me think I was crazy for noticing the changes in you? Was it fair to look me in the eye every morning and tell me you loved me while you were texting her between meetings?" He had no answer for that. I grabbed my suitcase, my purse, my laptop bag. Everything important could fit in 3 bags. Funny how 3 years of a life together could be reduced to such a small space. "I'll come back for the rest of my stuff when you're at work. Sarah, please." His voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know I fucked up, but we can fix this. Please don't give up on us." I stopped at the door and looked back at him one last time. He looked small somehow, diminished, standing in the wreckage of what he'd destroyed. And I felt nothing. The love I'd felt for him just hours ago had burned away, leaving only ash. "You gave up on us the moment you messaged her," I said quietly. "You just didn't have the courage to tell me." And then I left. No screaming, no begging, just silence. I drove to Jessica's apartment through blurry eyes, my best friend's voice on speakerphone keeping me grounded as I navigated familiar streets that suddenly felt foreign. She met me at the door in her pajamas, took one look at my face, and pulled me into a hug that finally broke me open. I sobbed into her shoulder while she held me, not asking questions, not demanding explanations, just being there like she'd always been there. Later, after the tears had dried and we were sitting on her couch with ice cream and wine, a combination only acceptable in emergencies, I told her everything. She listened with the kind of focused attention only a true friend can give, her face cycling through shock, anger, and protective fury. "I'm going to kill him," she said when I finished. Slowly, painfully, I know a guy who knows a guy. "Jess," I interrupted, managing a weak smile. "No murder, not worth the jail time." "Fine," she grumbled. "But I get to key his car at least. It's in the best friend contract." "Also no." She sighed dramatically. "You're no fun when you're being mature about heartbreak." Then her expression softened. Seriously though, babe, I'm so sorry. Daniel's a fucking idiot, and you deserve so much better. I knew she was right. Intellectually, I knew that none of this was my fault, that Daniel's choices were his own, that I deserved someone who would choose me every single day without hesitation. But knowing something and feeling it are two different things. And right then, curled up on my best friend's couch, I felt small and disposable, and profoundly stupid for not seeing the signs sooner. I should have known, I whispered. All those late nights, the secrecy with his phone, the distance between us, it was so obvious. How did I not see it? Because you trusted him, Jessica said firmly. Because you're a good person who assumes the best in people, and he took advantage of that. This is not on you, Sarah. He's the one who lied. He's the one who cheated. He's the villain in this story, not you. But inside, in those dark hours of the night when sleep wouldn't come and my mind replayed every moment of the past 4 months looking for clues I'd missed, I made myself a promise. I wouldn't destroy him. I wouldn't slash his tires or post his crimes on social media or show up at his office with Emily's screenshots. I wouldn't send angry texts or leave crying voicemails or beg him to choose me. I would do something much worse. I would let the truth and karma do that for me. The first few weeks after the breakup were a blur of grief and rage and bitter acceptance. I cried myself to sleep most nights, woke up reaching for someone who wasn't there, caught myself starting to text him about something funny I'd seen before, remembering that we weren't we anymore. Jessica was my lifeline during those dark days. She force-fed me when I forgot to eat, dragged me out of bed when depression tried to pin me down, and only occasionally threatened to accidentally run into Daniel in a dark alley. Her spare room became my sanctuary, a place to heal and rebuild and remember who I was before I'd wrapped my entire identity around being Daniel's girlfriend. Daniel, for his part, kept trying to text me. At first, the messages were apologetic, pleading. I miss you. I made the biggest mistake of my life. Please, can we just talk? Each one made my chest ache, made that treacherous part of my heart whisper maybe before my brain shut it down. Then, when I didn't respond, the texts changed tone. Defensive, justifying. You're being dramatic. People make mistakes. I thought you were more mature than this. Those messages were easier to ignore. They showed me who he really was when he didn't get his way. After about 3 weeks of radio silence from me, he sent one final message. I guess this is really over then. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I really did love you, Sarah. I'm sorry I wasn't enough for you. I stared at that message for a long time, marveling at the audacity. He'd flipped the script entirely, making himself the victim, suggesting that I was the one who'd given up, that somehow he wasn't enough for me when the opposite was painfully true. I almost responded, almost told him exactly how twisted his logic was. But I didn't. Instead, I just deleted the thread and blocked his number. It should have ended there. A clean break, a painful chapter closed, time to move on with my life, while he moved on with his. But then I noticed something while scrolling through Instagram one evening, about 6 weeks after the breakup. One of those mindless scrolling sessions where you're not really looking at anything, just letting images wash over you while your brain turns off. Daniel had posted a picture, him and Emily, though she was tagged as Emily Chen now, a full name and identity attached to the woman who'd been just a name on a screen before. They were at some trendy restaurant downtown, the kind with Edison bulbs and exposed brick that charged $30 for a burger. She was pretty. Dark hair, bright smile, wearing a dress I recognized from Anthropology because I'd almost bought the same one last month. But it wasn't their appearance that made me stop scrolling. It was the caption. Best date night with this one bought grateful blocked lucky guy. Best date night. Those words bounced around my skull like bullets ricocheting, because I'd read that exact caption before, had seen it on a picture of me and Daniel at a different restaurant with exposed brick and overpriced cocktails. Our 2-year anniversary dinner. I scrolled back through his feed, something cold settling in my stomach. There, 8 months ago, a selfie of us at a coffee shop. Caption, coffee dates with my favorite person. I clicked back to his recent posts. 3 weeks ago, a picture of Emily with a coffee cup. Caption, coffee dates with my favorite person. 6 months ago, a sunset picture from our weekend trip to the coast. Caption, nothing better than watching the sunset with you. 2 weeks ago, a sunset picture, different beach, Emily's silhouette instead of mine. Caption, nothing better than watching the sunset with you. He was recycling everything. Every caption, every pose, every supposedly meaningful moment was just a template he plugged different women into. The romantic gestures I'd thought were unique to us, special expressions of his love for me specifically, were just his standard operating procedure. I should have been angrier, should have felt betrayed all over again. But instead, I started laughing, a bitter, slightly unhinged laugh that made Jessica poke her head into my room with concern. You okay in here? You sound like a supervillain planning world domination. Look at this, I said, shoving my phone toward her. I showed her the side-by-side captions, the recycled romance, the utter lack of originality. Jessica's eyes widened. Holy shit! He's really out here giving her your sloppy seconds of fake romance? It gets better, I said, still scrolling. Look at this one from yesterday. It was a picture of Emily wearing a necklace. Delicate, gold, with a small pendant. Not the same as mine, but similar enough in style that it was clearly from the same jewelry store. The caption, surprise gifts for surprise occasions. Because why wait for special days to celebrate? He gave me almost the exact same necklace, I told Jessica. Said the same thing about not waiting for special occasions. I bet he's got a bulk discount at that jewelry store. Jessica took the phone from me, scrolling through with increasing disbelief and disgust. This is... Sarah, this is actually hilarious. He's like a robot who only has one romance protocol programmed into his system. I know, right? The laugh kept bubbling up. Maybe it was hysteria. Maybe it was actual amusement at the absurdity of it all. But something had shifted in me. The hurt was still there. Probably always would be, a scar I'd carry. But it had transformed into something else. Something sharper, clearer. What are you going to do? Jessica asked, handing back my phone. I thought about it, about Daniel's carefully curated social media presence, his image as the good guy, the romantic partner, the reliable boyfriend. About Emily, who clearly had no idea she was getting recycled romance and secondhand sentiments. About the message I could send, public, loud, vindictive. But that wasn't who I was. And more importantly, it wasn't the most effective revenge. I'm going to do what he doesn't expect, I said slowly, the plan forming as I spoke. I'm going to congratulate him. Jessica blinked. I'm sorry, what? Think about it. He's expecting me to be bitter, angry. He's probably prepared some story about the crazy ex-girlfriend for when I inevitably lash out. But what if I don't? What if I'm just gracious, kind, almost too kind? I'm following you, but I don't know where we're going. I pulled up Daniel's post again and started typing a comment. Jessica read over my shoulder. You two look so happy together. Wishing you all the best, Daniel. You deserve all the happiness in the world. I hit send before I could overthink it. Okay, Jessica said slowly. I get it. Kill him with kindness. Make him look like the bad guy by taking the high road. Classic move. Not just that, I said. A plan crystallizing in my mind. Watch what happens. He'll panic because I'm not reacting the way he expected. He'll probably show Emily the comment, trying to prove that everything ended amicably, that I'm cool with it. But anyone who knows our history, his friends, my friends, mutual acquaintances, they're going to see that comment and wonder. Wonder what? Wonder why I'm being so nice. Wonder what the timeline is. Wonder if maybe things don't add up the way Daniel's been telling them. Over the next few days, my predictions started coming true. My comment got likes from people who knew both of us, from mutual friends we'd shared, from his co-workers I'd met at office parties. Each like was a signal that someone was paying attention, someone was connecting dots. My friends saw it. His friends saw it, and most importantly, Emily saw it too. The thing about lies is that they require constant maintenance. You have to remember what you told, to whom, keep track of timelines, make sure the stories match up. Daniel had been managing two separate narratives. The story he told me about Emily, a mistake, something that didn't mean anything, a moment of weakness, and the story he'd apparently told Emily about me, if he'd mentioned me at all, which, based on her complete lack of awareness, seemed unlikely. But now those narratives were colliding in public view. I didn't have to do anything else. I just had to wait. Wait for people to start connecting the dots. Wait for the overlaps in timelines to become obvious. Wait for someone to ask the questions that would unravel his carefully constructed story. I went about rebuilding my life, updated my resume, and started job hunting. I'd been meaning to leave my current position anyway, and a fresh start in my career felt right alongside the fresh start in my personal life. Reconnected with friends I'd neglected during my relationship with Daniel. Took up painting, something I'd loved in college but had abandoned somewhere along the way. Posted pictures of art shows and coffee dates and hiking trips, living my life visibly and well. Daniel kept posting pictures with Emily, the same restaurants, the same captions, the same recycled romance, but I noticed something. The comments on his posts were changing. Fewer enthusiastic congratulations from mutual friends. More quiet observations. Questions about timing. One of his college friends commented on a post, "Wait, didn't you and Sarah just break up? That was fast, man." Daniel's response, "Sometimes you just know when you found the right person." But the seed was planted, and seeds have a way of growing. I started getting messages, tentative at first. Friends asking if I was okay, if I'd seen the posts. Acquaintances expressing surprise at how quickly Daniel had moved on. Each message was a crack in his facade, a person questioning the narrative he'd sold them. I kept my responses simple, gracious, unbothered. "I'm doing really well. Thank you for checking in. Just focusing on myself right now." No bitterness, no accusations, just serene acceptance. It drove the point home better than any angry rant could have. Then, about a month after my congratulatory comment, I got a friend request on Facebook from someone I didn't know. The name wasn't familiar, but when I clicked on the profile, I recognized the face, Emily Chen's sister. I accepted the request. Didn't message her, didn't acknowledge it, just accepted and waited. 3 days later, she sent me a message. "Hi, Sarah. I hope this isn't weird. I'm Emily's sister, Rachel. I was wondering if you might have some time to talk. It's about Daniel." My heart started racing. This was it, the moment when Daniel's carefully separated worlds started to collapse into each other. I waited 2 hours before responding. Didn't want to seem too eager. "Hi, Rachel, of course. I'm happy to talk. When works for you?" We agreed to meet at a coffee shop, not one of Daniel's usual spots, somewhere neutral and safe. I told Jessica where I was going, sent her the location, just in case this was somehow a setup or a trap. Rachel was waiting when I arrived, nursing a latte and looking nervous. She was younger than Emily, maybe mid-20s, with the same dark hair and sharp features. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as I sat down. "I know this is strange. Emily doesn't know I'm here, but I saw your comment on Daniel's Instagram and I had some questions." "Okay," I said carefully. "I'm not sure what I can help with, but I'll try." She pulled out her phone, showed me the post where I'd commented. "You and Daniel dated, right? For how long?" 3 years. Her face fell. 3 years. And when did you break up?" "Early March," I said. March 3rd, to be specific. She did the math in her head, and I watched her expression change from confused to horrified. Emily and Daniel have been together since December. She told me they met on a dating app and hit it off immediately. He told her he'd been single for over a year. He lied, I said gently. We were living together when he started seeing your sister. I found out in March by going through his phone. Oh my God. Rachel put her head in her hands. Emily's going to be devastated. She really loves him. She's been talking about moving in with him, about their future together. She has no idea. I felt a pang of sympathy for Emily, despite everything. She was a victim in this too, fed the same lies and false promises I'd believed. I'm sorry, I said. I know that doesn't help, but I am. I know what it's like to think you're building something real with him, only to find out it was built on lies. Did he cheat on you before? Rachel asked. With other people, I mean. Not that I know of. But I also didn't know about Emily until I found the messages, so who knows? I paused, considering my next words carefully. Rachel, why did you reach out to me? She sighed. Because Emily's been acting weird lately, paranoid, asking Daniel questions about his past, about his ex-girlfriend. She didn't know your name. He apparently never told her. And he keeps brushing her off, changing the subject. When I saw your comment, something just felt off. The timing, the way you were so gracious about it. I looked at your Instagram, saw posts of you and Daniel from last Christmas from February. The dates didn't match up with what he'd told Emily. What are you going to do? I asked. Tell her the truth, Rachel said firmly. Show her the evidence. She deserves to know who she's really with. I nodded. She does. And for what it's worth, I hope she believes you. Sometimes it's easier to believe the lie than face the truth. We talked for another hour. I answered her questions about Daniel, about the timeline, about the red flags I'd missed. I showed her some of the recycled captions. The pattern of his romance by template. With each piece of information, Rachel's expression grew harder, angrier. He's a con artist, she said finally. An emotional con artist. Yeah, I agreed. He really is. As we parted ways, Rachel hugging me with the intensity of shared trauma, I felt something settle in my chest. Not quite satisfaction. The hurt was still too fresh for that. But something like closure, like the universe was finally balancing the scales. I didn't have to wait long to see the results. It didn't take long for people to start connecting the dots. The overlaps in timelines became impossible to ignore. The recycled gestures, the familiar captions, the patterns that repeated with different women. It all came together like a puzzle that had been missing pieces finally becoming clear. Rachel told Emily everything. She showed her sister the evidence. The Instagram posts with timestamps, my LinkedIn profile showing that Daniel and I had been together until March. Screenshots of him using the same romantic lines and gestures with both of us. She told me later that Emily had cried for hours, oscillating between denial and rage, before finally accepting the truth she'd been unconsciously avoiding for weeks. Because Emily, it turned out, had noticed things too. The way Daniel was sometimes evasive about his past. The way certain questions made him uncomfortable. The fact that his apartment had felt oddly impersonal when she first visited, like someone had recently scrubbed it of another person's presence. Small things that, in isolation, meant nothing. But together, they painted a picture she hadn't wanted to see. Emily confronted Daniel on a Tuesday evening. I know this, because what happened next became spectacularly, painfully public. She didn't call him or text him first. She showed up at his apartment, our old apartment, the one I'd moved out of 2 months earlier, with Rachel by her side for moral support. She knocked on the door with the screenshots loaded on her phone, ready to demand answers. Daniel opened the door, expecting Emily alone, probably planning another recycled date night with another reused caption. Instead, he found both sisters, one furious and one protective. And the look on his face apparently told Emily everything she needed to know before she even asked the first question. When did you and Sarah actually break up? Emily asked, her voice steady. Despite the tears Rachel told me were streaming down her face. Daniel tried to lie. Of course he did. I told you, we broke up last year. March 3rd, Emily interrupted. You broke up on March 3rd. We'd been together for 3 months by then. You were living with her while you were telling me you loved me. He tried to explain, tried to rationalize, used the same lines he'd used on me. It's complicated. You don't understand. It didn't mean anything at first. But Emily had learned from my mistake. She didn't stay to listen to the justifications. Are there others? She asked. Besides Sarah and me, are there others? The pause before his answer told her everything. Get out, Daniel said, his voice turning cold in that way it did when he was cornered. This is my apartment. If you can't be rational about this, rational. Emily laughed, bitter and broken. You want me to be rational about the fact that you've been lying to me for our entire relationship? I never lied. You told me you'd been single for over a year. I didn't think it mattered. It mattered to her. Emily gestured with her phone, where my Instagram profile was still pulled up. It mattered to Sarah, who you were with for 3 years. And it matters to me because I deserve to know who I'm actually dating instead of the character you've been playing. Rachel told me that Emily had turned to leave then, dignity intact, despite her devastation. But Daniel made a crucial mistake. He grabbed her arm, tried to pull her back, tried to force her to stay, and listen to more excuses. Don't touch me, Emily said, yanking her arm away. And then, loud enough for the neighbors to hear, we're done. Lose my number. Lose my sister's number. If you ever contact either of us again, I'm filing a restraining order. They left. Daniel, according to Rachel, stood in the doorway of his apartment, looking shell-shocked, as if he genuinely couldn't believe that his actions had consequences. But Emily wasn't done. That night, she posted on her Instagram story, not a long rant, not an angry tirade, just a simple, devastating message. PSA: if a guy tells you he's been single for a year, maybe check his timeline. Some people rewrite history to make themselves look better. Learn from my mistakes. She didn't name Daniel. Didn't have to. Everyone who followed both of them could read between the lines. And the message was screenshot and shared, spreading through mutual friend groups like wildfire. Then I got a message from Emily directly. Hi, Sarah. You don't know me, but I'm the girl Daniel was cheating on you with. Except I didn't know I was the other woman until my sister showed me the timeline. I'm so sorry for what he did to you and for being part of your pain, even though I didn't know it. Rachel told me you were kind to her when she reached out. Thank you for that. And I'm sorry I didn't see through him sooner. I stared at that message for a long time. Emily hadn't done anything wrong. Not really. She'd been lied to just like I had been. She was a victim of Daniel's manipulations, not a co-conspirator. I wrote back, thank you for reaching out. I want you to know I never blamed you. You didn't know, and that's not your fault. He lied to both of us. I'm sorry you had to go through this, and I hope you heal from it faster than I did. You deserve so much better than what he gave you. She responded almost immediately. Thank you for saying that. I was so worried you'd hate me. I don't hate you, I typed. I hate what he did to both of us. But you're just another person he hurt. We're on the same side here. We messaged back and forth for a while, trading stories, finding the recycled moments and manufactured romance that he'd used on both of us. The same restaurants, the same playlist he'd claimed to make specially for each of us. The same weekend getaway spots he'd presented as his secret favorite places, even the same pillow talk phrases he'd whispered in the dark. It was infuriating and hilarious and deeply sad all at once. This man we'd both loved, both built futures around, was nothing more than a template running the same program on different women. There's something else you should know, Emily messaged after we'd been talking for about an hour. I wasn't the only one. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? After I confronted him, I did some digging. I found his dating app profiles. He never deleted them. He's been active the whole time we were together. There are conversations with other women, recent ones. From last week, she sent screenshots. Daniel's profile on 3 different dating apps, all marked as active, within the last 5 days. Messages with women whose names I didn't recognize. The same opening lines, the same jokes, the same carefully crafted persona. He'd been cheating on Emily the same way he'd cheated on me. We weren't special. We weren't even unique in our pain. We were just the ones who'd lasted long enough to warrant the girlfriend title, while he continued shopping for something better, someone more exciting, a newer version to run his romance protocol on. "Oh my God," I messaged back. "Emily, I'm so sorry." "Don't be. I'm furious, but I'm also relieved. Like, at least now I know it wasn't about me or you. It's just who he is." She was right, but that didn't make it hurt less. The story spread faster than either of us expected. Emily had posted her vague warning, but our mutual friends filled in the blanks. People who knew both Daniel and me, who'd attended our parties and celebrated our anniversaries, suddenly saw the timeline with clear eyes. They remembered the dates, the transitions, the way Daniel had introduced Emily as his girlfriend barely a month after I'd moved out. His social circle started to implode. Marcus, his friend from work, sent me an apology message. I had no idea what was really going on. If I'd known he was lying to you while seeing someone else, I would have said something. "I'm sorry, Sarah." Other friends reached out with similar messages. Some apologized for not seeing the signs. Others expressed disgust at Daniel's behavior. A few admitted they'd always thought something was off about him, but hadn't wanted to cause drama. Daniel's carefully cultivated image, the good guy, the reliable partner, the romantic boyfriend, dissolved overnight. The man who'd always been quick to post about relationship goals and couples activities, who'd positioned himself as the ideal boyfriend on social media, was exposed as a serial cheater and compulsive liar. His Instagram, which had been full of comments celebrating his relationship with Emily, became a graveyard of deleted posts and disabled comments. He removed every picture of her, every romantic caption, every trace of their relationship. But the internet remembers, and screenshots lived on in group chats and private messages. Then his professional life started to suffer. Someone, I don't know who, though I suspect it was one of his colleagues who'd been friends with me, mentioned the situation to the partners at his law firm. Not in an official complaint way, but in a did-you-know gossip way that nonetheless reached the right ears. Law firms care about reputation. They care about integrity. And while personal relationship drama wouldn't normally affect someone's career, the pattern of lying and manipulation, the evidence of him juggling multiple relationships while misrepresenting his availability, suggested a character issue that made the partners uncomfortable. Daniel wasn't fired, but he was quietly moved off the high-profile cases he'd been working on. No longer invited to client dinners or networking events where he might represent the firm. Effectively sidelined, his career trajectory stalled indefinitely. I learned all of this through the grapevine, through messages from mutual connections, through Jessica, who heard things from friends of friends. I wasn't seeking information about Daniel's downfall. I was genuinely trying to move forward with my life, but news reached me anyway. And then came the message that brought everything full circle. It was from Emily again, sent 2 weeks after our initial conversation. "Thank you," she wrote, "for the clarity." Attached were screenshots, more dating app conversations, more evidence of Daniel's infidelity. But these weren't conversations between Daniel and other women. These were his messages with someone new, someone he'd started seeing while he was still technically with Emily. The timelines overlapped by weeks. "I confronted him one last time," Emily explained in her message. "Told him I knew about the others. He tried to say it wasn't what it looked like. But I saw the messages, Sarah. He's been telling this new girl the same lies he told me, that he's been single for months, that she's special. that he's never felt this way before. He lost both of us the same week, she continued. And honestly, I think that's what hurt his ego most. Not that he felt bad about what he did, but that he got caught, that his pattern was exposed, that he couldn't keep juggling all of us without consequences. She was right. Daniel had operated under the assumption that he was smart enough, charming enough, careful enough to maintain multiple relationships without anyone finding out. He'd compartmentalized his life so effectively that he'd convinced himself it was sustainable. But lies always collapse eventually. They're too heavy to hold up indefinitely. His social circle had imploded, his professional reputation was damaged. His image as the good guy was shattered beyond repair, and the women he'd manipulated had connected with each other, shared their stories, and realized that none of them had been crazy or paranoid or overreacting. We'd all been right. Our instincts had been correct. We'd just been too generous, too willing to believe in love, too conditioned to doubt ourselves instead of doubting him. I didn't have to lift a finger. I didn't have to expose him or publicly shame him or seek revenge in any active way. The truth did all the work. 3 months after my initial congratulatory comment, I was living my best life. I'd landed a new job, a significant step up from my previous position with better pay, better benefits, and a team that actually valued my contributions. The interview had gone so well that they'd made me an offer on the spot, and I'd celebrated by taking myself to an expensive dinner at one of those restaurants with the Edison bulbs and exposed brick, the same kind of place Daniel used to take me to while recycling romance. But this time, the experience was entirely mine. No shared memories, no bitter associations. Just good food, good wine, and the satisfaction of treating myself to something I'd earned through my own hard work. I'd moved into my own apartment, a small one-bedroom in a neighborhood I'd always loved, but Daniel had claimed was too far from work. It had hardwood floors and big windows that let in morning sunlight and a little balcony where I could sit with coffee and watch the world wake up. Every piece of furniture was chosen by me for me. No compromises, no discussions about what we liked. Just my taste, my style, my space. Jessica had helped me move in, and we'd christened the apartment with wine and takeout on the empty living room floor, toasting to new beginnings and lessons learned the hard way. You know what's crazy? I'd said that night, slightly buzzed and feeling philosophical. 6 months ago, I thought my life was over. Like, genuinely thought I'd never recover from what Daniel did. And now, I'm happier than I was even before I found out about Emily. That's because you're not carrying his dead weight anymore, Jessica had responded, always blunt and always right. He was holding you back, babe. You just couldn't see it because you were too close. She was right. In retrospect, I could see how much of myself I'd compressed to fit into Daniel's life. The job opportunities I'd turned down because they would have required relocation. The friendships I'd neglected because he found my friends dramatic or high maintenance. The hobbies I'd abandoned because he thought they were weird or childish. I'd been so focused on being the perfect girlfriend, on making our relationship work, that I'd forgotten to be myself. Now I was remembering, reconnecting with old friends, taking painting classes, and discovering I was actually pretty good, going to concerts and art shows and poetry readings that Daniel would have found boring, dating casually without pressure, meeting interesting people, and learning what I actually wanted in a partner instead of just accepting what I had. Met better people. That's what I kept coming back to. Not just romantic prospects, though there were a few interesting possibilities on the horizon. But better friends, better colleagues, better connections with people who appreciated me for who I was instead of who they needed me to be. I started a blog about my experiences. Nothing specifically about Daniel, just essays about rebuilding after betrayal, about learning to trust yourself again, about finding strength in the broken places. It resonated with people. Comments poured in from strangers sharing their own stories, thanking me for putting words to feelings they'd struggled to express. One comment stuck with me. Sometimes revenge doesn't need fire. It just needs time. You living well is the best revenge. They were right, but it was more than that. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about reclamation, reclaiming my time, my energy, my life from someone who'd never deserved it in the first place. Emily and I stayed in touch. Not close friends. Exactly. There was too much shared trauma for that to be comfortable, but friendly acquaintances who checked in on each other occasionally. She'd started therapy to work through the trust issues Daniel had instilled in her. She'd gone back to school to pursue a degree she'd put off. She was healing in her own way, on her own timeline. You know what's funny? She messaged me one day. I used to think I'd never get over him, like he'd broken something fundamental in me. But now I mostly just feel grateful. Grateful, I'd written back, surprised. Yeah, grateful he showed me his true colors before I married him, before I had kids with him, before I wasted more years on someone who fundamentally didn't respect me or any woman he was with. He did me a favor, really. Just took me a while to see it. I understood exactly what she meant. Months passed. I built a life that felt sturdy and real and wholly mine. A life where I didn't have to monitor someone's phone or question their whereabouts or wonder if I was being paranoid. A life where trust was the default instead of something I had to fight for. And then, on a crisp Saturday morning in October, exactly 7 months after the breakup, I saw him. I was at a cafe in the neighborhood where I used to live. I didn't go there often anymore, had built new routines and new places, but I'd had an early morning meeting nearby and stopped in for coffee on my way home. He was sitting alone at a corner table. Daniel. Looking older somehow, though only months had passed. There were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before. His hair was slightly longer, unkempt in a way that suggested neglect rather than style. He was staring at his phone, but his eyes weren't really focused on the screen, just staring, hollow and distant. For a moment, I considered leaving without being seen, avoiding the awkwardness, the potential confrontation, the dredging up of old wounds. But then, something in me shifted, settled. I realized I didn't need to run, didn't need to hide. This was my city too, my life too. And I had nothing to be ashamed of. I paid for my coffee, a fancy oat milk latte with an extra shot because I was celebrating a successful week at work and I deserved nice things. As I turned to leave, Daniel looked up. Our eyes met. I watched recognition flash across his face, followed by a complicated mixture of emotions I couldn't fully parse. Guilt, maybe. Regret. Or possibly just discomfort at being caught in a moment of vulnerability by someone who'd seen him at his worst. He opened his mouth. I think he wanted to say something. Maybe apologize again, though his apologies had proven worthless before. Maybe explain, though no explanation could justify what he'd done. Maybe just acknowledge the strangeness of this moment. Two people who'd shared 3 years of their lives, now strangers, in a coffee shop. But I didn't give him the chance. I just smiled. Not a cruel smile or a bitter one. Not a smile that said, I win or you lose. Just a simple, genuine smile. The kind you give to someone you used to know. Someone who used to matter. Someone who doesn't anymore. I didn't say anything. Didn't need to. My new clothes, my confident posture, the lightness in my expression that hadn't been there in months before the breakup. It all said everything that needed saying. I'm okay. Better than okay. I'm thriving, and you're just someone I used to know. I walked past his table, out into the bright October morning, leaving him there in the corner, with his cold coffee and his hollow eyes. I didn't look back. Didn't need to. That chapter was closed, the book shelved, the story over. As I walked home through streets painted with fall colors, I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal that had shattered me, the grief that had nearly drowned me, the anger that had burned so hot I'd thought it would consume me, and then the healing, slow, painful, frustrating healing that happened in fits and starts, 2 steps forward and 1 step back. The gradual realization that his actions said everything about him and nothing about me. The reconstruction of my identity, separate from being someone's girlfriend. The reclamation of my power, my agency, my life. Sometimes revenge doesn't need fire. It doesn't need public call-outs or dramatic confrontations or elaborate schemes. Sometimes revenge is just living well, being happy, moving forward while they stay stuck in the consequences of their own choices. I didn't destroy Daniel. He destroyed himself. His pattern of lies and manipulation would have caught up with him eventually, with or without my intervention. The house of cards he'd built, relationships based on deception, an image that didn't match reality, a life that required constant management and compartmentalization, was always going to collapse. I just happened to be there when it did. And more importantly, I happened to survive it, to grow from it, to become someone stronger, wiser, more self-aware than I'd been when I was wrapped up in a relationship that looked perfect from the outside, but was rotting from the inside. He cheated. That was his choice, his action, his failure. But karma did the talking. And I just kept walking forward into a life that was entirely my own. A year after the breakup, I was invited to speak at a women's empowerment event about resilience after betrayal. I almost said no. The wounds still felt too fresh to examine publicly, the story still too personal to share with strangers. But then I remembered all those comments on my blog from people who felt less alone because I'd shared my experience. I remembered Emily, who'd found the courage to leave because she'd seen someone else survive it. I remembered my younger self, the one who'd thought her life was over, who'd needed to see evidence that happiness was possible after heartbreak. So I said yes. I stood on a small stage in a community center filled with women of all ages, all backgrounds, all carrying their own stories of betrayal and of survival. And I told them mine, not with bitterness or anger, but with honesty and hope. The hardest part, I said, wasn't the betrayal itself. It was learning to trust myself again, learning to believe that my instincts were right, that I wasn't crazy or paranoid, that I deserved better than someone who lied to my face every day. Heads nodded throughout the audience, recognition of shared pain, shared healing. But here's what I learned, I continued. You can't control what other people do. You can't control if they lie or cheat or betray you. But you can control how you respond. You can choose dignity over drama. You can choose healing over revenge. You can choose to walk away from people who don't deserve access to your life. More nods, a few people wiping tears. And here's the beautiful thing about choosing yourself, I said, feeling my voice strengthen with conviction. When you stop trying to hold together something that was never meant to last, when you stop shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's life, when you stop believing that you're only valuable as part of a couple, that's when you discover who you really are. And that person, she's pretty amazing. The applause was warm and genuine. After the talk, women lined up to thank me, to share their stories, to ask advice. I listened to tales of betrayal and resilience, heartbreak and recovery, each story unique in its details, but united in its core truth. We survive. We heal. We become stronger in the broken places. One woman, probably in her 60s, waited until everyone else had left before approaching me. "Thank you," she said quietly. "My husband left me for a younger woman 20 years ago. I've spent 2 decades thinking I wasn't enough. But listening to you today, I realized I was always enough. He just wasn't worthy of what I had to offer." I hugged her, this stranger who felt like a sister in survival. "You were always enough," I confirmed, "and you still are." Walking home that evening, I thought about Daniel one last time, wondered if he ever thought about me, about Emily, about all the women he'd hurt with his inability to be honest. Wondered if he'd learned anything, or if he was still running the same patterns with new victims. But mostly, I realized I didn't care. His story wasn't mine anymore. Whatever happened to him, whatever consequences he faced, whatever growth he achieved or failed to achieve, it had nothing to do with me. My story was about survival and resilience and self-discovery, about learning that I was complete on my own, that I didn't need someone else to validate my worth, that the right person would never make me question my sanity or doubt my value. My story was about karma, yes, but not the revenge kind, the balance kind, the kind that says the universe has a way of setting things right, even when we can't see it happening. The kind that rewards those who choose growth over bitterness, healing over revenge, truth over lies. He cheated, karma did the talking, and I walked away from the wreckage and built something beautiful.